my good friend?
Hey, happy post
Day of sunshine.
savings. Yeah, day of sunshine, daylight savings time. We got an hour back. It was light last night at around 7:30, and I knew that because I was trying to get in bed. Welcome, Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast, episode 249.
249 it is. Yeah, we had 1 day of sunshine, bro.
But I enjoyed it.
It was nice.
I soaked in it. We went out to eat with my mom, and then we took Hayden to the playground and park, and he tore it up for about 3 hours. And because we were all stuck inside on Saturday, so all in all, it was a 50-50 weekend, but it got to end it on a high note, and it's good. It's a good March, and a lot of athletes racing, and which is exciting, and just kind of it'll be. That's definitely, I think, just a really exciting time of year for athletes as really things kind of kick into. Got half marathons and triathlons, obviously, and then bigger races starting, here just at the end of this month in April, and then after that, it's just basically nonstop. So it's definitely my favorite time of the year, and I know that we usually get a lot of new listeners that time of year because, let's be honest, sometimes it's difficult to create loads and loads of non-repetitive content over the winter so we don't bore our athletes to death. But hey, we do our best. We've done it for 2.5 years. We've done it for 200 and almost 3,000 episodes. Yeah. I did read a interesting quote the other day from a guy which applies to us and something I kind of want to apply to this episode today. And he was talking about YouTube videos, but he said, making YouTube videos is this weird balance between making content for people that never knew you existed and people that have heard your same shtick for 2 years straight. You always got to ride the line between explaining too much and then not explaining the same thing 100 times. And I thought that is basically you could replace YouTube with podcasts.
Okay, I was going to say, when we start making our YouTube videos, we'll think about that.
No, but it's the same thing, for podcasts and the athletes that we've had that have been around with us for, 2.5 years, and you got people who join us for, I would like to know this for our closed Crushing Iron Facebook group. When you started to listen to our podcast, did you start at the most recent and then work your way backwards, or did you start at one, or did you just kind of search through and pick one that you thought might whet your palate and satiate your triathlon appetite? I think that would be interesting to know on our end.
Yeah, and if you're not in the Crushing Iron closed group, search Crushing Iron group on Facebook and send us a request. We'll let you in to said group.
Yep. So what do you think?
What's that?
So what do you think? Do you agree with that?
No, yeah, I do. I was kidding about the YouTube. Yeah, it's totally makes sense. I mean, I think that's kind of society right now. There's so much information, and it's a endless quest to kind of come up with new and relative stuff, and it's kind of repackaging.
It's repackaging, yeah.
But as we always say, it's kind of like we really, for the most part, kind of just work in and out of our philosophies and present them in different ways and things like that. And I think that, I just had a weird analogy. It's sort of like going to church in a way. You kind of keep going, and you kind of know what's at the gist of it, but you keep hearing different stories. And isn't that kind of true, though? I don't want to compare
politics and religion here. Let's, yeah. I mean, it's the practice of it all.
You just want to stay on track. That's the whole point.
It's not like you don't. Yeah, it's not like you don't know the end of the story. Yeah, that's right.
You meet friends, and it's I don't know. I mean, it's hard to argue with their model.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Let's rein it back in before we lose all of our religious listeners.
That's not what I mean.
No. I know. I do. I get what you're saying. I think it's about
it's a habit, sort of.
It's a habit, and it's about just being reminded why you practice what you practice.
And I can say that. I got an email just yesterday. I get them all the time. It's like, I haven't been listening in a while, and thanks for yesterday's podcast. It really kind of put me back on, track about what's important. And I haven't been motivated, and I've had the wrong perspective and things like that. And I think that's sort of what the common theme is let's get the right perspective on what we're doing here.
This is true. And with perspective is, hopefully comes something that you can apply to all things in triathlon. And so, yeah, I do. I think it's a healthy balance and something that, we always try to do our best on. And sometimes we get sidetracked, and hey, sometimes we don't. But I have plenty of topics for today. Yeah, because I can already tell you got nothing.
I've got them, but mine are obscure, and you know.
Yours are always obscure.
I know.
Give me one. Give me your favorite, or you think most obscure one, and I'll tell you if we're even going to sniff it.
Okay.
Just totally
I don't even know if this is necessarily obscure. I've been making a list of. I had a conversation with one of the club athletes by email the other day, and we were talking about confidence, and so I just started. Because like I told her, I said, I've been playing sports my whole life, and there's times, this sport can be so humbling, I guess, that I have to remind myself that I'm an athlete sometimes and we were talking about confidence and how to build confidence. And I started writing out a list of things that I can do to, sort of solidify my confidence going into the season. And one of the things I talked about was, and I've talked about this a while ago, but it's sort of having to convince myself that I'm a swimmer instead of like I swim or I jump in the pool and flop around. And now when I go swim, I try to get in my mindset that I'm a swimmer. And I think that, crossing those thresholds in any of the sports makes a difference. And I do the same thing with running. I've always kind of believed that I'm a cyclist just because I had that background. But when I'm running, I kind of reiterate and I try to flow with it. And I convince myself mentally that I'm a runner instead of just some guy that's out here plodding along at the end of a triathlon. So that's kind of what I was doing, is sort of, building my list. And I just like to write about stuff like that so it sinks in.
Yeah, I think confidence is something that, again, going back to the church thing, you need to, confidence also comes from repetition and doing things continuously that may not. I think one of the biggest kind of misconceptions about just the word confidence is that it has to be about something like very grand. I'm really confident that it can't just be, I'm pretty confident I'm going to go to the grocery store today. That's where my level of confidence is. But most people find confidence in just the day in and day out habits that they've created on doing things that may or may not be appealing to other people, but are appealing to themselves. And
that's funny. I just want to jump in here because I think we're on the same page with that. It's just my first list number for confidence was stay off my phone. That's a weird thing, but it's like, I think it sort of has a way of kind of, and I mean that in a sense of just kind of like noodling around, looking at dumb stuff or...
Yeah, wasting your time.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely nothing that's going to enrich your life.
Yep, exactly. And so that had really nothing to do with me convincing myself that I'm a triathlete or anything like that. But it's just those little things that sort of keep adding up that kind of distract you, like you said, and take you away from the baseline of who you are.
It's and it again, it just shows you that confidence is kind of in the eye of the beholder. Because I think everybody wants to have confidence in different areas of their life. And I think in training, confidence is a very tricky line. And we talk about this all the time with athletes that like to, you most of the time you have two general types of athletes. This is kind of on the fringe of what I wanted to talk about today in terms of what athletes should be doing and what athletes should be looking for as they are entering more of like a race specific phase after a build and base training, if they're doing kind of traditional periodization. Because I had an athlete ask me a really good question the other day. But race specific training is built around confidence, and for most athletes, and where you kind of find a happy medium between the different types of personality types and even approaches from other coaches is that I can't believe I just rhymed that, approaches from other coaches. That was not on purpose, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself. You have athletes who accumulate confidence over weeks and months, and trust in those weeks and months to give them the ultimate confidence on race day. And along with that comes a boatload of trust, which is not easy. And then you have other athletes who gain what I would consider mostly experiential confidence, which would be, I ran a marathon 8 weeks out from Ironman. I know I can run the marathon now. Or I rode 112 miles, so now I am prepared and confident I can run 112 miles of an Ironman. Or 56 miles or 26, or running a half marathon, or swimming 2.4 miles straight. Like, you see athletes do it all the time. I swim 2.4 miles today in the pool. I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds so boring. But so you have athletes who deal with and gain confidence from those singular experiences. I have to accumulate or finish X, Y, and Z distance to be confident I can race this distance on race day, or complete this distance on race day. Then you have other athletes who are, and this is more so, I think a majority of athletes, but I don't know. I know the athletes that I work with, it takes a lot of trust because we rarely, if ever, do any of the distances. It's more about quantity than it is just a singular quality workout through at least the majority of the training. But then as you get into more of a race specific phase, then it becomes taking your 7 days of really high quality, consistent, quantity training into, a couple of easier days, but some very hard and very demanding singular days. And so I think confidence, again, so it's a great topic, and I think athletes gain it from all types of different areas. And I think it's based on their experiences, and then I think it's based on how they've gained confidence in the past. And the quote-unquote do the distance athlete is very, very, very common, and that's where they gain a lot of their confidence from, especially for athletes doing something like a 70.3 or even an Olympic distance or Ironman for the very first time.
Yeah, so you think that the majority of triathletes are experiential, and
yeah, absolutely.
I think that obviously, I think there's probably some middle ground there that needs to be hit too, between the two. I mean, you mentioned quality versus quantity, and I agree with that what you shouldn't have to do all those distances and things like that, but I'm sure that, like for me, I have to remind myself that sometimes, and I think that's what I've been going through with this list of things or whatever. It's sort of like you remind yourself, because sometimes you forget that, hey, man, you've done a lot of this stuff before. You've shown yourself, and you start to doubt or whatever like that. So you got to get into there, and that's kind of that. It's sort of experiential confidence by reminder or something like that. But yeah, I found myself and I think it's a lot to do with the podcast and the stuff we talk to is like I told somebody yesterday that sometimes I actually listen to the stuff we talk about here. But I've been doing running since consistently, a lot since December, and every Sunday or Saturday, once a weekend, and I've done it for about 6 weeks in a row. We had the run camp and a couple other things get in the way, but I've been running the same route every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And every week I add one more hill repeat. I'm doing this an easy run, but I'm just adding one more hill repeat every week. And I've been just going easy and not looking at the watch kind of thing. And it's given me a lot of confidence because it's not only is it kind of speeding up a little bit without trying, it's just I feel like I'm getting done with this now. And I'm not trashed at all. I just sort of, it's that, I guess it's option one, the accumulate confidence over the weeks and months kind of thing. Because I haven't typically done that. A lot of times I'm just what sort of that experiential confidence thing too is sort of like cramming for a test, like we talk about a lot too. It's that sort of late kind of proof and rush to just get ready at all costs kind of thing. Maybe
it's how do you, well, it's also how, how do you want to approach it? Because to your point, like, you have athletes that when either from what they've read or from what they've heard or what kind of information that or their personal experiences, you have athletes who would say, I'll be more prepared if I go out one day and suffer through running 26 miles.
Right.
But I only ran one other time that week, and I only ran one other time the next week because I'm so trash. But I know I cover the distance, so I know I can do it. Versus an athlete who works up their run mileage and is able to average 40, 45, maybe even 50 miles a week over the course of 3, 4, 5 weeks, but never runs anything over a singular distance one time of 18 or 19 miles. And so you've got athletes in both camps with both mindsets that think one will go to the start line much more quote unquote confident that they can cover the distance. And I think that's when you start to kind of really blend in the mental and emotional and physical differences between the types of confidence. And I think the one where the athlete may suffer through 26 miles in training, it's more of I know mentally and emotionally, at least today, I was able to manage to get through the distance. Versus an athlete who may think, all right, I know I'm not going to do 16. Some athletes I've had before haven't even ran anything over 16 miles, but yet on race day, because they've been able to accumulate enough run mileage and enough frequency and enough cycling, I think, which is the most underrated. Well, something we don't talk about enough is the importance of cycling and pacing and strength when it comes to relating to running a successful half or full marathon distance in a triathlon. But they'll still have, well, they won't have a ton of confidence if it's their first time, but as they go, because I'll be honest with you, it takes a while to work with athletes, and I have some that I think we'll have 7 athletes going to Boston this year, and every one of them that I've worked with in the past, they're like, well, hey, I haven't run more than 17 miles, and I haven't done any longer race pace type runs. Because, Boston is one of those tricky, specific paces where if you want to qualify, you already know out the gate what you have to run. It's not like in triathlon where if you want a podium, you kind of know a range, or the breakup of the distances, swim, bike, run with the conditions and the race day, all those kind of things, how your race is going to play out. If you want to qualify for Boston, you want to run, you already have a pace. And I think it's such a tricky balance for runners, especially, and the ones that I work with, because that makes the obsession over pace even more severe. Mm-hmm. Because they're like, how am I going to qualify if I have to average 8:30s? I haven't done any of my long runs under 9 minutes this whole time.
Yeah, that is weird.
And so it's hard. It's hard for the athlete to, I think, accept that. But once they have, they're like, okay, I just know I got to keep they gain confidence again by repetition. And then I think, you can't, because you always say, but you just got to trust the process. Well, yes, but the process also has to yield results. Or maybe you can keep trusting the process, but maybe it's not the right process. And so, because I think sometimes we as coaches and even athletes sometimes fall back into the conundrum of, okay, well, if we're not getting better, then maybe is it about the process? Sure, but it's also about finding the right process. And so for athletes that gain confidence from running, especially, it's to do those 22, 23 miles at quote unquote race pace. And so again, I think as we get into this more daunting time of year for athletes, now we've got an extra hour of daylight. People are gonna be getting outside. You're gonna have these temptations internally, because you're gonna feel, especially for first timers, you're gonna feel the need to have to do the distance, to prove it to yourself. And I think it's really, really common, especially with the self-coached athlete, because that's sometimes the only metric that they have to use that they can actually quantify and see and apply is completion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's totally fair, and I totally 100% understand it, because I used to be one of those athletes that it was like I got to at least get close to the distance to know that I can do it. Versus athletes who maybe have been in the sport for a little while longer, or know that it's about accumulation of fitness and strength and durability and all these other areas that kind of help mold you into who is going to line up the swim start on race day and be able to perform to the best of their ability. And again, just like people who obsess over chronic training load, CTL and Training Peaks, think that the higher your chronic training load is, the more fit you are. That's not necessarily true either, because you could definitely be overtraining, and just because your body can withstand ramming your head into a pole for 25 hours a week doesn't mean that those 25 hours a week are going to yield your best fitness and your best day. And so it's just, there's so many numbers to take into account. There's so many approaches to take into account. There's so much information to take into account. And so I think what's really important for the athlete as we get into this time of season again is to focus on appropriate confidence and seeing the forest and not the tree, and looking back at how many miles you're running a month, or how many, miles you've ran over the last 60 days, or the amount of mileage you're running in maybe 24-hour, 36-hour spans. Like, those things are important, and I think that sometimes it's hard, and I think that you have to have help from friends and coaches or whoever in order to really frame the best route to gain the most confidence when it comes to your biggest race of the year.
That's a great point, because it's so hard to look back at what you've done. It's kind of like you're always in that "what have I done for myself lately" phase. It's hard to sort of look back 2 weeks or 2 months and say, all this has been adding up. All this, we had that accumulated fatigue podcast way back in the day, and it's just so hard to wrap your head around that. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable to think about how all that stuff really does add up. And it's just sort of like, I always used, because I play drums every once in a while, and when I go back in there and when you think about how do you become a good drummer, it's about the simplest little exercises over and over and over and over again. And you don't think about those once you get to the point where you're actually like playing songs and stuff like that. But those are the, like the baseline for how you got to where you're at. And you give them no credit. It's similar to, starting out your training season and doing little runs here and there and that sort of stuff. But that's really what's happening is that's the, the mechanics, and that's the fundamentals, and the load that's starting to build. And it's just hard to, because who really understands the human body? It's just an amazing machine, and you start thinking about, but really it's just sort of that repetition and that load that we keep putting on ourselves, and then building that fatigue and kind of rebounding and resting. And it's hard to watch over that when you're just doing it by yourself. I just think it's almost impossible to really keep a objective opinion.
Well, it's because we always, it's the world we live in now. People want to, it's all about what have you done for me lately? Like you said, what's going on today? And I think it's tough for athletes who, as they kind of lose, as they kind of forget where they've been and how far they've come, that I think that one of the hardest things for athletes, and something that I have to remind athletes frequently of, is the good and the bad. If they're going through injuries or sickness or job stress or life stress, or they're just absolutely doing outstanding. I think you'd have to remind them at times, like, listen, like, we're still a long, long way away. We're still, like, months and months. For some athletes, we're months and months and months away. For some athletes, like I've been an athlete who is training for Ironman Lake Placid and really wants to qualify for Kona. Was on a bunch of 70.3 podiums this last year, and I think definitely has the ability. But we were chit-chatting back and forth about his half marathon and a bunch of other things, and I said, being that's your main goal for this year, I was like, we want to peak for that day and not a day sooner, especially for this athlete's age. And so I think that you have to have both like the long game picture of what's important at the moment, but then also if you're getting really, really close to race day, be like, yeah, but like I see you facing forward, but turn around and look like how far you've come, how well you've done. Look how many days a week you've ran, look how many miles you put in. And then sometimes I think it's really helpful just to kind of look at where you were this time last year, and so I think we lose sight of our progress through long-term progression because we're always looking for the next stop. Like we oftentimes forget how many turns and straightaways and bumps in the road or just, perfect riding that we've done with our training and how we've progressed as an athlete because our eyes are always focused ahead. And it's very rarely are they focused on where we are now. And usually what I found as a coach that if athletes are really, really consistent and they're doing really, really well, they're always looking ahead because they are basically that's their forward motion, personified. They are moving forward. They are consistent. They're seeing, consistent small gains here and there, just like you should be. And they know they're making progress. So to them, their eyes get huge and all they can see is down the road on what is possible. And that I know I can do faster. And I know I can do this because they feel it because they're living it and they understanding and they're able to see readily almost day in and day out what happens when you're consistent and you're motivated and you take care of yourself. So they're always looking forward. Then you have a lot of athletes who are either struggling with consistency, struggling with motivation, or coming off injuries, and they might be driving forward, but their eyes are looking in the rearview mirror. God, look where I've been.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be so fast, or I used to have this fitness, or I used to have this, but they're still going forward with the, just not paying attention on to the reality of the situation, which is, let's just look at where you are. You have to focus and understand about where you are, and I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult just in general, but I think for athletes it's really, really hard as performance driven as we've all come with the metrics that we're able to access day in and day out with training and racing and comparing, apples to apples or apples to oranges. And I think that when it comes to confidence, that also can lend itself to how athletes actually feel and gain confidence. And is it only from racing? Is it only from saying, see, I was able to do X, Y, and Z? Or do they lose confidence by not seeing a result on the day that they expected it? Versus, all right, 6 months ago, my average pace was 9-minute miles on this same route, this same day with the same conditions, and my heart rate was this. And then 7 months later, their average pace was 8:30. Which should give them huge confidence. But again, that would take you looking back and understanding what it took to get there. And then I think a lot of the times we don't like to look back is because it reminds us about how long it took us. Because we all even if we're process oriented and we're have these long-term visions and goals that we get lazy in remembering that, God bless, that took me a while. That it happens over months and years. I struggle a lot sometimes with athletes. Like, they want to hire as a coach. Like, I want to do this year. Can I do it? I'm like, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Now I can tell you we can do our best at getting you the best prepared down the line, but I just think that there's this huge misconception and need for need-driven athletes that want you to tell them that they can do this in 6 months. And I think a lot of coaches will probably say, oh, I guarantee you can do X, Y, and Z in swim. Because, if we look at your performance metrics and how you've done over the last few minutes, that's definitely going to lead you to running a 145 marathon. And after we, do your best bike split and you're able to do a 245, like I could definitely see you running a 5:17:28 on this day. And people aren't that predictable. Life is not that predictable. Adaptation is not that predictable. All you can see is what you're gathering at the present, and then make the best decisions you can for the next few weeks, instead of assuming that everything is going to be the same. And so when you have athletes that want to gain, want to gain confidence from you as a coach, they're like, oh, he thinks I can do this. Like, I'll just tell you that I think you can finish. Is usually the best I can tell you, but then I'll maybe give like a caveat of, if we do the very, very best that we can, then I bet you we might have we may have a shot. I don't know, but usually I'll just be like, I don't know, I have no idea, and I don't know why you're asking me this. I'm not like a fortune teller, and I think that's definitely a deterrent for some athletes and can be frustrating at times. But the athletes are as predictable as most athletes are in specific areas of their training and their habits and their tendencies. Predicting athletes' fitness for 4, 6, 8 months down the road is impossible. And it's totally impossible, because everything changes. Fitness changes, your body changes, everything, your body's willingness to adapt to specific stimulus changes. It all changes. And so if that's where you're looking for confidence or to tell yourself, then a lot of times it's going to be misplaced, but it's going to land itself in a box of expectation where you don't have anything to back it up, but you threw it out at the moment to give yourself confidence, to tell yourself you can. And like we do that all the time. It usually comes in the form of clicking on a race button. Like, we talk about we talk about
Yep.
giving ourselves motivation, giving ourselves energy by buying a new set of wheels, or buying a smart trainer, or buying some expensive things, or I'm definitely struggling training for this half Ironman. So I'm gonna I'm gonna sign up for 2 fulls within 3 weeks. That'll give me the motivation. And at the same time, I think a lot of times what you're telling yourself is, I don't need motivation, I just lack confidence, but this is going to give me confidence, because if I tell myself I'm going to do it, then at some point I might just actually truly believe it. But before belief becomes action. And that is so oftentimes what gets lost in the conversation with athletes and their projections and their expectations. Like, they want you to skip the action. They have the belief that they can do X, Y, and Z, and they have this belief that they have this confidence. But I hate to break it to you that none of that means anything unless you're willing to do the things that are required, and you're willing to put those thoughts and those feelings and that drive into action. You can't just skip that step. You can't just say, but I'm pretty sure that I used to run Boston back in the 80s, so I've got it in me. I'm like, yeah, dude, that was like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't really know that that's applicable. Like I'll give myself for example. When I used to grow up swimming year round, I could do under 1 minute hundreds like it was nothing. I was an elite level backstroker. All at the age of like under 15, and now over 20 years later, guess what? I have zero chance of ever being able to actually do that again. And if I did, I'd have to put in give up everything else and basically train swimming like 30,000 yards a week. And even then, I'm not even sure I could do it, just because of, dude, I'm old. So while you might have the confidence, is it real, or is it confidence that you're trying to basically fool yourself into believing it? And I know that's not the most fun conversation to have, but confidence should be gained from action, and confidence should be cultivated within these things that you do day in and day out, and the personal belief that you find, not that you label yourself as, not because you wanted to hop on Instagram and put on your, merge your face with a picture of a lion, #fierce, #confident, You know, like
that doesn't work.
That doesn't work. Like none of that shit works. Like you may pretend like it is, but it doesn't work. You gain confidence from action and trial and error. Like, perfect example. I was at the playground yesterday, and Hayden was playing with his friend of the Med, and I got a sidebar. I got to give props to Allie. She was like extremely extrovert yesterday at the playground and like made friends with this new mom. But anyway, and she'll hate that I said that, but love you. Is while we're over there playing,
congrats, Allie.
Congrats, Allie. It was a really huge move. I didn't talk to anybody except for the kids. And so there's this huge slide, and Hayden went and tried to go down it, like got to the very edge of it. Like he wanted to have the confidence. You know, and of course I was like, yeah, go ahead. It'll be fine. And of course, like nothing that I say means anything, because if he doesn't want to do it, he's not going to do it. And so he got to the very edge, probably, I don't know, 20 times, and he would get back up and he'd be like, I can't do it. And I was like, dude, you can do it. It's also just okay to say, I don't want to do it. Like, you can do it if you want to, but you just don't want to do it, which is fine. And I think that's a mindset that we also play with ourselves. It's like, I just can't do it. Yes, you can. You just won't. And about 2 hours later, right before we left, without any prodding from us, after he had gone through this little back and forth like 20 or 30 times, he just went down on his own without even blinking. Nobody around, nobody telling him what to do. He just went on his own because he was ready. But also because he took himself to the point over and over and over again by action and by taking steps and by getting himself more like closer and closer to that spot where you knew he was uncomfortable because he didn't want to do it, or he was having second thoughts, but he kept putting himself in that position and then finally did it. And it was because he finally gained the confidence, but it wasn't because I told him to. It wasn't because I told him he should have confidence. And I think that's the conversations that we have with ourselves. Like, oh, yeah, Robbie, you're confident, man. You can do this. And then you step up and you're like, oh my God, no, I can't. It all comes, the truest forms of confidence stem from action. And the truth of the matter is even when you've done things so many times, and you've accumulated all these specific experiences where you've shown action and you've applied action, it still doesn't mean and guarantee that when you toe the start line, you're going to have this like supreme confidence, which I think is also totally fine. I think it's actually better. But again, so I think going back to kind of the root of what we were talking about within confidence is that you can't skip the steps. You can't just say, you know what? You got to put it into action. You can't say I'm confident. You have to be, and in order to be something, you have to provide an action, which is important.
Yeah, I always get fascinated when you talk about the swimming stories, because back in the day when you were in junior high and high school or whatever, you didn't miss practice, probably, right? I mean, very rarely. I mean, I played baseball and basketball in high school, and I was always practicing. I didn't miss it. You just didn't. I mean, it wasn't like, I'm going to take the day off. That just didn't happen. And when you're younger, you're obviously more resilient and everything like that. But, you know, that's why you probably get so skilled and kind of set that benchmark for who you are back in those days and your abilities, and the ceiling for what you have is because you just go to practice. And you keep working on stuff. And the problem is, I think my problem back then was I didn't realize what the heck I was going to practice for. I just thought it was sort of this disciplinary action that they always wanted to instill in. You know, it's like I didn't really grasp the idea of working on little things to get better at the big things. It's a weird thing that I think a lot of coaches miss out on. It's just sort of like, just do it. You know, that's kind of the mentality. But then, you know, we get older, we get into triathlon, and next thing you know is we've got the freedom. You know, it's like we can take today off, we could take tomorrow off, whatever the case may be, and we start doing that. And then I think that honestly, you know, kind of back to the first thing I said about, you know, not to waste time on my phone or whatever, but those little things like that as an adult that you kind of put off, there's so much weight that kind of can build up on our lives now, and to miss those little things, like to go into Training Peaks and see that yesterday was red, that you missed a day of workout, that can immediately have an effect. And it goes back to this consistency thing we talk about all the time, is that's what I think a byproduct of consistency, one of the maybe most underrated byproducts, is the confidence you get because you know you've done it and you've done the workout. Because it's like if you see red every third or fourth day, there's a tendency to think that, oh man, I'm falling behind, I've missed it, I got to do catch up, and then you start doing things out of your wheelhouse, and the next thing you know, you're exhausted. And then, like, that's why one of the things I gauge my workouts on now is, like, if I wake up the next day and I'm not sore, it's like,
yeah.
If I feel like, okay, I'm ready to go today. But it's a simple metric, I guess, is that, how did I succeed yesterday? Well, I did the workout, and I feel like I want to do more workouts today.
Mm-hmm.
And
it gives you confidence that you can not only do and complete them, but that you are going to maintain and continue to have that mindset to do them, which I think is which is where it all stems from. I mean, I had one of the most insightful text messages that an athlete sent me yesterday after her race, and she said, I think it went really well. That was probably my best triathlon ever. I'm really, really, really happy with this one. And she just said, she said, I really feel like I'm at an entirely new level of training. And I said, you are. I said, you finally decided to be consistent. You don't make excuses anymore. You find a way. You're a totally different person. And she sent me this text I think just really falls into this conversation. Honestly, she said, I think my run partner bails on me more often now because she knows I'll still figure out a way to get it done when they meet up.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the past they would meet up and they would both find excuses, or they would both give in to the other excuses not to run and go do something else.
Ice cream.
Yep, something like that. Ice cream, coffee, whatever, anything that's good and fun. But I just think it's such a telling, who you attract and who wants to participate in the specific, ebbs and flows of your journey when you lack confidence, when you don't have confidence. And when you have confidence, you have people around you that want to continue to push you to continue to keep that confidence. And then there are people who want to learn from it. And then when you're down and you don't have confidence, some people will want to play with that too, because they also don't have confidence. It's like you always find the same groups of people always go out and talk about the same things again, because they're kind of they like that comfortability, of all having the same, struggles in a way. But I think confidence is tough, and I think that one thing you should always strive to do is just be confident in your ability or your attitude to give effort, and that's where you should gain your confidence from. Because I think ultimately, at the end of the day, when you race, that's how you should judge yourself in the first place. And I think that's where the differences in confidence come from, is what is the root? Where is the root of your confidence cultivated? Is it from, meeting other people's expectations? Is it from meeting your own expectations? Is it from only PRing? Is it from X, Y, and Z? When those also take into account so many other outside factors that you're not really giving yourself a fair shot, But when the root of how you cultivate your own confidence comes from your effort, then that's the truest form. In my opinion, that's the truest form and the truest gauge of how confident or what kind of confidence you have. Because if you can be confident in your ability to give effort, high effort, low effort, and understanding and acknowledging that, then I think your confidence is just really truly centered on something that is personal to you and not other people.
It has roots, man.
It has roots. Listen, there's no better roots than your own. And there's not a single person on this planet that understands your roots better than you. And I think sometimes we just allow our own growth and confidence and in training and in performance and in life to just constantly be overseeded by other people's, expectations and the things that they do, when at the root of it all, no pun intended, it's what matters most to you. and your confidence about how you're going to execute the things in your life that are the most important to you, and how you're going to execute things on race day.
Yeah, because you see it all the time. You know, somebody will go out for a group run or whatever, and they'll say, yeah, they just were running way out of my zone, and so I just dropped back, and I did my own run, and then I met them later. I mean, that's confidence to me. It's sort
I
of,
100% agree with that.
whether that's like, it's basically not caving into adult peer pressure in a way. It's sort of like, Megan, one of our club athletes, posted a video yesterday. She said she had a 8-mile run, and her route took her, and it ended. It was probably time, but whatever. It ended about a mile away from her car. So she, instead of running that, she walked it and felt like she gained, I think, confidence by doing that. It's like, hey, it's kind of like stop when you're ahead, or stay ahead of the game kind of thing, because there's no sense in, and that's when it always happens, right? Whenever you fall into prey of peer pressure of some sort, or someone else's outside influence, that you go down a road that you don't want to go down, and the next thing you know, you're just like hating yourself again. And so it's sort of there's a lot of power in no, and knowing when to say no, that kind of stuff.
It's the most powerful word in the English language. And we don't use it enough. I use it plenty, but you should use it all the time.
Yeah. No.
Use it. It's your life.
But, sometimes.
No.
But then again, it's like we talk about all this stuff, and I can totally see that, like, for example, our run camp. A lot of people came in, I'm sure, not believing that they were ready to tackle whatever 3 days of running and hiking and all this sort of thing, and they just sort of let go. Of course, you divided it up into accessible chunks for different people and stuff like that, but there's something to be said for kind of pushing yourself outside of different places sometimes too. I mean, that's another way to build your confidence, I think. I mean, it's obviously case by case, and you just never know necessarily when it's going to hit. It always comes back to that ride we took out on the trace when I was just riding 60, 70, and you're like, today you're riding 100, bro. And you just felt it in me or whatever. And sometimes you feel it. And I think that's, if you're feeling the ability to, and when I say that, I don't mean like, yeah, I can possibly do it. I just mean like some days you just, for whatever reason, have something else. And there's nothing wrong with kind of like stepping over those boundaries a little bit to get to another level of confidence, sort of a breakthrough moment or something like that. And we know when those come, but those are important as well.
I think that listen, we can probably end it on this one, is with an analogy. It's, how do you want to grow your confidence? Because like what you just said, you gained confidence and had the confidence within you to do an 100+ ride before you did it and do it well, versus the person who said they won't have confidence so they can do 100, then they get it. It's like how do you want to grow your tree and have confidence you can grow one? Do you want to plant the seed and cultivate it and grow it and watch it grow into all things it takes to actually get it to grow? Or do you want to go to down the street to the landscaping store and buy a tree that's 5 years old and plant and put the bulb in and like, hey, see, I'm growing a tree. I just got to water it now.
Yeah.
It's experiential in process, or it's just a singular action. And I think that we always toe the line, I think, as humans on how we gain confidence. But I think you can always retrace your steps, to, when you cross over and you do something you've never done before, that you had confidence to do something that you weren't comfortable with. How did you get there? How did you gain this confidence? I didn't gain it today. It's like, it's just that, like, the same thing, like overnight. I'm not an overnight success. I've been trying to succeed the last 15 years. I just finally made it today in your eyes, or the world, or becoming a celebrity or whatever. And I think the same thing goes with confidence. It's like, how'd you get that confidence? Like, I don't really know. I can't pinpoint the time that I gained this level of confidence. I've just always been trying to do X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden, it's just not forcing it. It's just doing the best you can each day, and then finally, just like, oh my God, like I just did this. It's like things always go awry and become askew when you try to force it. Because if you're forcing something, it usually means something isn't ready. And the more times you do that, the more apt it is to break, or not to work, or end up bad. But again, and you talk to athletes about this all the time, where they have these breakthrough runs.
Yeah.
None of them are planned.
Right.
Same with the rides. None of I had an athlete the other day who just texted me, I think it was Friday. She texted me, well, new functional threshold. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, on this specific workout. I look back, and she's like, with no rest, with like huge training load on this specific bike trainer session, she like went way above her all-time like 20-minute peak power. And I was like, yep, there we go. That's just constant. There was no expectation. There was no, I'm going to do this today. It was, you open your eyes and you're there, versus trying to make yourself become. I think we oftentimes lose sight of how we've gained some of them. It's wisdom. I think is what it is. It's you've accumulated it over the course of time, in the course of experiences and events and people, and that's how you get to it. You don't just go to the store and buy it, and expect to have it. So I think
that's a great point. The analogy there is awesome. I mean, it sort of goes back to one of our favorite authors, Bukowski, and he says, "Don't try." That's his big quote, and we talk about that a lot. It's just that I think there's something to be said for, in the case of that new FTP, I think when you're not trying and you're relaxed, I think just the idea of like putting that, we talk about race time goals and things like that, and how much pressure that can put on you, and how that can literally be squashed by the time you get out of the water, and then trying to catch up to it can just ruin a race. I just think you gotta, it's sort of like, the best things come along usually when you're not looking for them. It's just kind of, it's that confidence to be in the moment, to be in yourself, and to trust that things will show up. And I think that's a great way to look at race day too. You can have, the greatest athletes in the world obviously know what they have to do, and there's going to be pressure on them from the get-go, but they train for that and nonstop. They know, we're not training like they train. That world-class athletes and things like that, they are expecting that pressure. They're training for that pressure, and they, often fail at that. Even the best athletes in the world can't handle game day pressure, race day pressure. It's one thing to say, yeah, I'm on today, or I'm going to be good, and I'm going for it. But it's another thing to actually be able to pull that off. So I think that there's a lot of wisdom in, like you said, going into races or going into training sessions without high expectations, and then you might be surprised at yourself about halfway through. You're going to be like, whoa, wait a minute here. What's going on? I just feel this. And that's when stuff happens, when you're least expecting it, I think.
You quit trying so hard to get there, and one day you just wake up and realize that you're here.
Yeah. It's just, I guess, confidence in the process more than the results always.
Yeah, it's all about the journey, man.
Now, I can tell you something that I'm not confident in. Home repair.
Hey, I could have told you that.
I am the absolute worst, man. I ordered a new blinds for my kitchen.
Ooh, blinds are tricky, man.
Blinds, man, they own me. They have my number. I measured the frame, I'm like, I ordered them up, and they came in, and about an inch too long because I neglected to kind of compensate for the track of the window.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to try. I've drilled, I bet I have 10 holes for my brackets. I tried the inside, the outside, the above, And I finally was like, okay, these aren't wide enough, but I'm just going to put them up above the frame. And 10 brackets later, Home Depot trips, the whole 9 yard, headed in, slid the blind in, and I kind of, you know how they always come like tied together, so then you pull them apart. I pulled it down, and it was a foot short. Just like, what?
Listen, you should have hit me up. We did the blinds at our new house a couple years ago. I can totally 100% sympathize with the turmoil that is blind installation.
I'm gonna have to paint the whole kitchen now because I've got so many bracket holes. It's unbelievable move by me. And now I'm at this point where, like, okay, I've got one unboxed. I got the other one in the box. I'm like, God, I got to send these back. I mean, how do you... the whole return thing, it's like, now I'm trying to find other windows, maybe, like even in my garage, maybe they might fit. Oh.
Frames, no windows going out. I'm like, yeah, it's a good place for a blind.
Yeah, no window, exactly. I'm just going to put these things up somewhere where they actually fit.
Oh, well, better you than me.
That's where I'm at. I need a coach for home repair.
Yeah, I think we could all use a coach for home repair or a mentor. Allie's my personal mentor for home repair. She's all about it. But again, it's race season. We hope you are gearing up. You are getting ready. The weather's getting warmer, and I hope you're taking these chances to get outside and put to use all of that hard, sometimes daunting indoor training where you're stuck inside in the pool, inside on the treadmill, inside on the trainer, and you're excited to get out and enjoy some spring and summertime temps. And I do have to say that be flexible this time of year. If you're a self-coached athlete, or I usually have to go through this reminder with my athletes around March and April of every year. If you have a specific bike workout or a specific run workout in a day, and the weather now gives you an opportunity to get outside and ride your bike, get outside and ride your bike. Just make the appropriate adjustments, and please do yourself a favor. Get outside, get some vitamin D, enjoy the fresh air, and it'll do your body good. For all things Crushing Iron, coaching, camps, training plans, our club, podcast, the blog, swim analysis, you name it, it is there. You can head over straight to crushingiron.com. And if you want to reach out to Mike directly and you have tips for him on blind installation, you can go to crushingiron@gmail.com. If you want to email me directly, you can go to c26coach@gmail.com.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. See you.
See you.